Hey everyone, welcome to our small footprint. Today's video is just a bit more of the kitchen, trying to get everything prepped. So the next couple of videos following this will be the planning for the grocery trip. And this is just using up some of the stuff that I needed to get out of the fridge and freezer to make room for new stuff. So we made some lasagna soup with some bolognese that have been frozen, and we're using some of the sweet potatoes up and making sweet potato brownies, which were great. We will definitely make them again. So I decided to share that with you today, and then the next couple of videos will be planning videos, and then it'll be all the shopping hauls and things like that. So looking forward to that, to sharing that with you, and I will see you again in the next couple of days. Have a great day, guys. So the weather has been a little bit frustrating lately in relation to getting breads and stuff done. My routine has been thrown because it's been so cold and things like that. So today I decided that I'd do a same day sourdough because I wanted some for dinner, which meant that I used a higher starter ratio. I used about 720 grams of water with 200 grams of starter, a kilo of flour, and about 20 grams of salt. And I used my KitchenAid to mix it up for me today. So this is a really high amount of starter. I would normally only use 50 to 100 grams of starter for a double batch of bread. So this is going to go inside near the fire to try and proof in a decent amount of time for me to use and cook it. It's not going to be, perfect bread, but it will still be well and truly edible with dinner. So I got that put inside and ready to go for later, and we'll just judge how the day goes as to when it will be ready for baking or not. Once I got that sorted, I decided that I needed to use some more of the sweet potatoes that I had in abundance. So I thought I'd make a couple of different things with them, one of them being a sweet potato brownie. So I peeled and cut up a whole lot of sweet potatoes and then put them on a tray with a little bit of oil just to help them cook, and stuck them in the barbecue to roast. They took about 30-35 minutes to roast. You want them till they're sort of squishy. Steaming them means that you're not going to get that sort of a skin on the outside. Roasting means that they're a bit drier. I don't mind them either way, to be honest. I just judge my recipe that I'm cooking, the texture of the recipe afterwards. So sometimes you need to add a little bit more liquid if the potato's too dry, or hold back on some of the liquid, that kind of thing. So I roasted them, put them in the barbecue to roast while I was getting everything else sorted. I also made some sourdough pasta to go in the fridge, some for dinner tonight and some for next couple of days. So I do a ratio of 30 grams of oil with 3 eggs and 100 grams of starter, 400 grams of flour for my pasta dough. And I use my KitchenAid. Any sort of a food processor will work. You just throw it all in and then blitz it until it sort of comes into these pea-like balls. It doesn't go into a full ball of dough. If it wasn't a sourdough pasta, you'd bring it all together into a full dough. But because it's a sourdough pasta, you want the dough to be a little bit dry because it's going to hydrate as it ferments. So once the pasta has gone into the little balls in the Thermomix, you then pour it out onto the mat and bring it all together into a solid ball, so that you can just knead it into a solid ball, a nice stretchy sort of ball, and then keep it covered for a few hours on the bench till it ferments, and then after that you can stick it in the fridge and use it over the next couple of days. Once the sweet potato had roasted, I put together a brownie mix. So I had a bit of a Google of a few different things that I could use, and just sort of picked something that to base this on. I used about a heaped cup of sweet potato with a couple of eggs and some coconut oil, and sweetener of choice I just used raw sugar, and then put it in the Thermomix and blitzed it until it was combined, scraped it down and blitzed it again, so that it was all the liquids were sort of blended up together. Once that had happened, I added some cacao, I used some spelt flour, a bit of salt and a bit of baking powder, and then I blended that in the Thermomix as well, scraped it down and blended it till it was all sort of good and looked right and was blended. Then I cooked it in a square baking dish. So I lined that with some baking paper and just poured it into the baking dish. I'm doing this in the barbecue, so cooking time is going to be a little variable because you want brownies to not be quite set in the middle when they're done, and that's a little hard in the barbecue, but we will figure it out as we go along. So I stuck that in to be cooked and kept on going with other things. The next thing I did was I made some yogurt for the kids. So I have a Green Living Australia electric yogurt maker, an electric thermos type thing, and I can make 2 litres of yogurt at a time in it. The way I make my yogurt is I use 100 grams of milk powder, and then I use some culture that I also bought from Green Living Australia, or I use 1/4 cup of my homemade yogurt if I have it. I regularly forget to pull out some of the cooked yogurt, some of like the previous batch of fermented yogurt to use with the next one, so I have some culture in the freezer so that if I need to I can use it, and you just use the very tip of a knife to do it. I add some calcium chloride drops, which is just helps it thicken up, and I happen to have some, so I use it. And I use UHT milk because it doesn't require being heated or heated and then cooled or anything like that, because it's already been pasteurized and put into those containers. So I always just add 1 litre, blend it all up, and then once it's all blended I add the other litre and make sure that there's no lumps in it. And then the lid goes on and it just goes into the electric thermos for however long you want to leave it. We normally do about 12 hours, which gives it a sort of a tangy flavour and a nice consistency. And then once I pull it out, it goes in the fridge till it's chilled, and then the kids can eat it however they want. I've been making a few different variations of chocolate cookies over the past few days, few weeks, just trying out a few different things, trying to find something that works. So I made another batch today, and all they have in it is cacao and sugar, eggs, coconut oil, some flour and some choc chips. So it's just all blended into one bowl, all folded into itself. My KitchenAid bowl was dirty and the Thermomix bowl was dirty as well, so I just did it all by hand, and it comes into sort of a dough consistency so that you can work it with your hands at the end anyway. So we brought it all in together and then rolled them into balls and put them on trays to be baked up. These ones were very cake-like. Everyone's enjoyed them though. I think I'll just go back to making biscotti for myself, to be honest, because I'm just not a huge fan of most of the biscuits that I've been making lately. But I really like biscotti, so I probably will just go back to making that for myself, and the kids can have whatever these other cookies that I make and enjoy those ones. This is what the brownie looked like when it was cooked. So it's still got that little bit of a wobble in the middle, which is what we like, but the knife goes in and out clean. So the bread dough had proofed enough that it was bubbly all the way through, so I decided to just give it a go because we wanted it with dinner. So because it was a same day sourdough, it's high starter, and I warmed it using the fireplace rather than ambient temperature. It is a very sticky sort of a dough, but I knew it wasn't going to be perfect, so we sort of dealt with that. So I am cooking it in these enamel billy cans, which I use in the wood stove, so I decided to use them in the barbecue as well, and they will help with the dough because it's so sticky and wet. They will give some structure to the sides of the dough and help with the rise and the lift of it, and keep it a little bit taller rather than it spreading out pancake-like. So I put it in the billy cans and into the barbecue to cook. This is what the cookies look like baked, very much like a cakey sort of a biscuit, just a soft chocolate biscuit. Everyone enjoyed them, so that's the main thing. I rolled out the pasta, one of the batches of pasta that I made to have with dinner tonight, so I just used my attachment that's on my KitchenAid and rolled it out like I normally would, spread it out into an oval, placed it through at the thickest setting and fold it in on itself, and then go through on the thickest and then run it through from the thickest to the thinnest until it was done. So I think I did this in 6 slots. That's about the right size to make it manageable and handleable, and I just put it in from 8 all the way through down to 1 till it's the thinnest one, and then hang it on my pasta drying rack thing to keep it clean and out of the way, and put that aside for cooking with dinner. So we were having lasagna soup for dinner tonight because I had some chicken bone stock that I had made the day before when I was making dog food. So I decided that that's what I would do. So my lasagna soup is basically just a bolognese that is a lot thinner, realistically. So instead of starting bolognese from scratch, I used some of the frozen serves of bolognese because we're trying to clear up some freezer space anyway, so I may as well use it. So I used this big container full of bone broth first and warmed it up, and it was lovely and gelatinous. It was a really good batch, and then added the bolognese to it. After I added the bolognese, I added a couple of jars of passata and a jar of tomato paste, and you can add anything you want in here at this point. You can sweeten it a little bit if you want. You can add some more herbs and spices. You could add anything you'd like. I don't add too much because my bolognese is already tasty and my bone broth is flavorful as well, so it's not a huge deal. So you bring it all up to the boil, get it all soup-like, and then once you do that, you rough cut your pasta sheets. So this, everywhere I've seen, uses the pre-bought fresh lasagna pasta sheets that you rough cut up, because that's, you know, lasagna soup and all that. So all I did was I rough cut up all the pasta that I had just rolled out to use in the soup, and you add it raw into the sauce so that it thickens up the sauce as it's cooking, but cooks in the sauce as well, which makes it really soft and flavorful as well in there. So you just boil that up till the pasta's cooked. The longer you boil it, the softer your pasta gets. It will fall apart if you cook it for too long. Some people like that, so it's entirely up to you taste wise, and depending on how big a pieces your pasta is, how fresh it is, how thick, all that sort of stuff. So you can do it with dried pasta as well. The bread was cooked. It worked out quite well. I cut it while it was hot, which means that it's going to be pretty dense and a little bit sticky, because, you know, cutting hot bread always ends up that way. But we were having it with soup, so it didn't really matter. So I sliced it up as well as I could so that the kids could have chunks of it to dip into their soup, and then we served it up on a board with their soup. So this is what the soup looks like in a bowl. And this is how we serve it to the kids. We just give them a bowl each and then put the bread in the middle of the table, and then they can dip and eat however they want to eat it. So thank you very much for joining me again today. That was today's kitchen sort of, efforts, and I will see you again in the next couple of days.